So yes, my name is Srin. I am the CEO and co-founder of a company called Accomable, and we are trying to use the sharing economy to make travel more inclusive, and also to make the sharing economy itself more inclusive. So we are a technology startup based here in London. We've been operating since last summer. We're trying to make travel easier for millions of disabled and elderly people around the world through the use of the sharing economy and crowdsourcing accessibility. Just by way of brief introduction to myself, I have a really strange and weird background. So I started off life as a research scientist, and then for some reason unbeknown to me, I requalified as a lawyer, and I worked in the City of London for 4 years as an M&A lawyer. I finally realized that it was the most boring thing ever. And I went back to university and did an MBA at Oxford, but while I was there, probably the most important thing that I learned was actually I spent time to learn to code. And make my own web apps, basically. But enough about me. I'm here to talk about what we're trying to do to extend the sharing economy to an underserved section of the market. So I think the first thing is to take a bit of a step back and sort of explain the type of problem that we're trying to solve. So if you have any kind of mobility problem or a disability or something that precludes you from getting around as easy as everybody else, it can be really hard to find good information on accessible services or just accessibility in general. So I know this from personal experience, and I know this from just it's something that's well spoken about. And just to put this into context, so this was a picture that one of our customers sent us last summer after using a well-known vacation rental service. So he ticked the wheelchair accessible box and the step-free box, and booked a trip to somewhere in sort of the West Midlands of the UK, and like a 1-week stay. Rocked up to this building in the morning, and there were 3 steps to get in. And so the customer said to the vendor, "Why did you say it was step-free?" And the vendor said, "Well, it is step-free once you get past the 3 steps." And so naturally, that unfortunate individual, their holiday was absolutely ruined because they then had to go find somebody else, somewhere else, and it's just a faff, right? I mean, you've got your bags packed, and then you have to spend like a day of your trip trying to find somewhere else. It's really going to make your day not so great. So yeah, the problem is often information is unreliable, it's not vetted, and that's if you can even find the information in the first place. Now, this problem has existed for a long time, but actually the sharing economy has probably compounded this problem in the sense that in sharing economy type marketplaces, pretty much anyone can be a market participant. That's one of the great things about it. But equally, when you can become a market participant to one of these platforms, essentially you don't need licenses, permits, and often you use those sorts of provisions and those legal systems to actually make sure that basic standards of accessibility are in place. So whether it be the Airbnbs and hotels or taxis or retail or goodness knows what, in traditional business models, there's a bit of a barrier in place to make sure that sort of minority groups or people from non-mainstream kind of sections of society are not excluded. Now, I think the first thing is that, a lot of people like me personally have no sort of bitterness or animosity that such services are not here yet, in the sense that I get that Airbnb and Uber are brand new, and I think there's a natural tendency for, I think all companies, the founders build for people who are most like them. So most of our big sharing economy platforms are built in Silicon Valley by young, male, 20, 30 something people from the big cities. So it's no surprise that they also then build products for 20, 30 something people who are healthy, urban, and whatnot. And yeah, so just another sort of example that, a lot of people in our community have a lot of ear for. That, like Uber, for example, I mean, they have sidelined a lot of the existing taxi monopolies, and a lot of existing taxi monopolies, in order to get their permitting, have to have a basic number of accessible taxis in their fleet. So, this is a problem, but I don't think, and it's not a niche problem either. So a lot of people will often classify this as a little bit of a side issue, but actually, the United Nations did a report a couple of years ago and basically said that their research suggested that 600 million people around the world will have some kind of accessibility need. And then to compound that, that is growing simply because in the Western world, we're not having enough children, we're all aging, and a lot of these mobility problems are becoming more and more of an issue. I think just sort of anecdotally, like we contacted Heathrow Airport to ask them how many passenger assistance requests that they now do. And I think last year they had to process 1.1 million passenger assistance requests, and about 5 years ago it was probably about maybe 40% that number. So I think it just goes to show how much of this is becoming more and more an issue. So, the fact that Western populations are aging and more of us do have mobility issues, I can imagine it's going to put a lot of strain on anything from pension systems to healthcare systems. So that's the problem. But then, I think as entrepreneurs, we also see the opportunity as well, in the sense that that's a lot of customers and that's a lot of people with an unmet need, and that's not really being catered for at the moment. So that comes back to my original question. So how do we make the sharing economy more inclusive, and how do we bring people not in the sharing economy into it? Now, a lot of people will say this is a question for like regulation, for policy, for advocacy. I think there's a part for that to play, but I think by their very nature, regulation and policy is done on a national level, whereas sharing economy technology platforms are global from day one. So I'm pretty pragmatic that regulation at the best can only play a very small part. And I think actually the approach that we've taken is probably going to be the key driver, in that you bring people into the sharing economy by actually making services and products for them. So I'm going to take another step back again to actually the story behind Accomable, because I think that actually will sort of really ram home as to why we built it. So the first thing first is we chose travel because I love traveling. So this is me and my co-founder on a beach in Los Angeles 4 years ago. And it was part of a trip that I was doing all around the world. So I took 6 months off to go traveling. I took some unpaid leave, and I'd never traveled anywhere before that. So, it was an incredible experience where I went all around the US, Europe, the Middle East, Asia, and sort of learned to dive out in Indonesia, and did things that were completely out of my comfort zone that I've never done before. But it was really difficult. Like as mentioned above, like I just lost count of the number of times I turned up somewhere. It just wasn't appropriate. I spent hours and hours in each destination trying to research what was doable. And it was just a waste of time. And I really resented the fact that my friends could travel at the click of a button, whereas for me, every time I wanted to go somewhere would take about a week's worth of research. So, the penny dropped that, for us to see the changes we wanted to see. Like, I tried emailing like the Expedias and the Booking.coms of this world to see whether they could improve the information they had, but, these conversations never really went anywhere. And the penny dropped. It was like, actually, no, we got to do this ourselves. We got to build something better. Now, in the accessibility space, when I say that to people, a lot of times people look at me a bit oddly. I think in our sector, we have got used to just constantly asking for other people to build stuff for us. If a service is not there, get someone else to do it. Whereas actually, and sort of talking to me as if it's something sort of brand new. Or it hasn't. For a long time now, and even now, people build products and services for their own community, or people that share a similar need simply because they understand it a lot better. So, just a modern example, I have friends who are gay who absolutely hated the fact that they were having to try and use dating apps that were not designed for them. They were designed for heterosexual couples, and they just were different. They just weren't usable. Whereas you've seen in the last couple of years, dating apps that have been tailored and they've been wildly popular because the founders, have seen that gap in the market. They've seen something that's underserved. Instead of asking Match.com or Tinder to do something differently, they've just gone and built it themselves. And we can actually go back a little bit. Like, I think there's tons of really interesting examples. But say the founders of Univision and Black Entertainment Television in America, the entrepreneurs who founded that, okay, it's not technology, but in the 60s and 70s, they got really frustrated that, television just didn't cater for ethnic minorities in the US. So they're like, screw it, instead of asking Fox or ABC or whatever to make different programming, let's just create a channel ourselves and make it. And these channels are like wildly popular now. So that was behind a lot of the thinking behind what we wanted to do at Accomable. And so actually, how do we, if we understand what our users need, how does that actually sort of come into practice? So this is an app that we launched last year. I think the key aspect of it is that, so any properties on there, we vet them very thoroughly. We ask for pictures, videos, for any kind of accessibility requirement. We break down set criteria more than just a tick box on wheelchair accessible. So some of our users need anything from oxygen to braille menus to wet rooms to mobile hoists. And if I said this to somebody at Expedia or Airbnb, they'll look at me a little bit blankly because they generally wouldn't really know what these things are. But again, we have no shortage of users who actually need these services. So anytime one of our vendors wants to put a property on the site, we make sure that they back up everything they say with pictures and videos. And bringing in the crowd, most of our leads and recommendations for new properties comes from people who have stayed somewhere. They usually flick us a recommendation on social media, and we'll go and contact the vendor. So at the moment, we just do properties because that was just the easiest thing to break into. But we have a whole host of plans for later in the year to expand to other types of services such as transport, providing travel assistance, providing medical equipment. And again, most of this equipment will be provided from our community. So we had somebody list a property near Cambridge, and that person said, look, I've got an adapted car, so if there's anyone coming over, I'm happy to drive them if they can't find a taxi. So that in itself, just following what our users want, has created a whole host of new services and opportunities for us. So we launched last summer. So I prototyped the app around sort of April, May last year. So I coded it, just sort of locked myself in my room for about 3 to 4 weeks and just knocked out the first version. And then, soon after that, I went on the road for 4 months. So I was a big believer in what the Airbnb guys did in the early days. So they got their first properties by literally knocking on 10,000 doors in Manhattan and manually recruiting them. So I did pretty much the same thing. So got in the car, went all around Belgium, Holland, France, Spain, Portugal, just staying with my vendors, recruiting properties manually, learning actually how their businesses work and how they actually manage their properties. And it was a really eye-opening experience for me. So, in a very short space of time, we now have inventory in 37 countries, and that's growing really fast. The problem we have at the moment is that demand outstrips supply by about 10 to 1 at the moment. And that's usually usually in most marketplaces, it's the other way. The problem is usually the other way around. There's more supply than demand. But we have the opposite. So we are hustling like crazy to try and find more properties. So, we've approached sort of the HomeAways of this world, and we are in the process of forming a deal with them where we will vet thousands of properties on their site to then remarket them to our audience base. So, hopefully by the end of the year, the plan is to have another 6,000 to 7,000 properties on the site. We have about 700 at the moment. As you can probably tell, so this is just getting in the van just before going off on the road trip to recruit the properties. And I think a key thing actually of anyone here working on sharing economy sites is the importance of rapid prototyping and constantly tweaking and improving and being responsive. And I think one of the most amazing things now is that you can be the CTO, lead developer of your company wherever you are in the world, as long as you've got a decent internet connection. So one day when I was doing a vendor visit, we had a bug reported on the site and it stopped working. And I'm generally someone, I have to fix it then and there. So this guy's got a property right by the mountains in Montserrat. And I just said, look, can I fix this right here, right now? And so it was quite surreal. I thought actually fixing your website on the edge of a mountain. It was I think, just eye-opening what you can actually do these days, and that you can actually build a company from an office or from the edge of a hill, basically. And so this is the kind of the recognition we've got in a very short space of time. Without a huge amount of effort, has been picked up by a lot of media. We are also in the final stages of closing probably the biggest seed round that anyone in our sector has done before. So hopefully that will be done by next week. And that will just allow us to bring on our team full time and expand into more places and just recruit more people, basically. And so that comes back to the original question. economy more inclusive? I think the answer that we propose is, well, we include people by building products to include them. And then this is just, it's taking away sort of the business side of it. At the end of the day, the mission is to help people travel. And that's nothing gives us more satisfaction than that. And this is something really nice that one of our customers sent in a few weeks ago. That, this is what to be honest, this is why we do this. It's to make people's lives easier. And this was somebody who just went on a girls' holiday out in Barcelona, a break from university. And it was their first holiday, and I think, it just really rammed home to the team that we're actually trying to do something that can ultimately help people.